Okay. Hello, and thank you for joining us for the NASIG Autumn 2024 session titled Connect Forward, Visualize Your Annual Database Renewals in Excel. My name is Amy Castillo, and I'm the Director of Access and Discovery at the University of Texas at Arlington. My co-presenter is Tracy Holtman, Associate Director of Access and Collection Services at Tarleton State University. I think I had that backward, Tracy, but you can make it later. In this session, I will walk through the steps in how to create a visual dashboard in Excel that shows usage, cost, percent changes, and cost per use, which will rely on pivot tables, pivot charts, and a slicer to isolate specific databases to view. I had created this same dashboard in 2021 when I previously worked at the Tarleton Libraries as the Electronic Resources Librarian and was excited to hear that it's still being used. Tracy will share how the dashboard, is used to communicate with stakeholders about upcoming database renewals. Right, so why use Excel? Not everyone has time to invest in learning and building database visualizations in tools such as Tableau or Power BI, or do not have a license to those products. Excel is relatively readily available and frequently used in work environments, although yes, it's another spreadsheet. And it's easy to set up and maintain, particularly if you're dealing with turnover or not a lot of technical skill or specialized knowledge is, or not a lot of technical skill or specialized knowledge is required in order to set this up. All that aside, I do encourage folks to explore those other tools if they have the capacity and the resources. Additionally, I'm sharing how I set up this dashboard, but I imagine that there's tons of ways that it can be done with Excel. So what you'll need is Microsoft Excel, and then the collected data for usage, annual cost of resources, cost per use, and the percent changes of cost from one year to the next. Okay, so setting up the master data table. And what I'll do is I'll be actually doing this live, going in Excel and showing all of these details live in Excel. But first, before I get into Excel, I want to talk about the data that we have here. So this sample data that is shared here is kind of the standard collected data that's used at Tarleton State University Libraries. This is collected on other spreadsheets. Yes, there's a lot more behind the scenes. The total usage is a total of downloads, which is the unique item request from Counter 5, plus searches. Searches is included since this covers non-full text resources such as abstract and index databases. Cost and percent changes are kept in a database tracker that tracks annual expenses for serials, databases, and other continuing resources. Cost per use is the output of cost divided by the total usage. The renewal month in this data set is captured to help keep an eye on upcoming renewals and prepare data to share with stakeholders in advance. Notes help contextualize the resource, such as, is it included in a multi-year deal? Were there prorated costs for a particular year? Was it newly added or canceled, just for those context details? And then finally, the data in the master table is set up similarly to Counter 5, where the resource name repeats multiple times for each data type, and that's used as a filtering point. Okay, so I'm going to actually exit out of here and go over to the live Excel. So I'm going to stop share for just a moment. I'm going to do that live. Okay, so share screen again. Okay. All right, so you would open Excel and then you would name the first sheet master table. So in this case, I didn't name the first sheet, I just put sheet 1. So I'm going to type in master table as the name of the tab for this worksheet. And then you would save your worksheet. In this case, I've already saved it as practice demo database renewals. And then you would add the following column headings left to right. So they would start with cell A1 would be resource name, B1 as fiscal year, C1 as renewal month, B1 as cost, E1 as percent change from prior year. Excuse me, open this up a bit from the prior year. F1 as total usage, G1 as cost per use, and H1 as loads. And then from there, hopefully you have this data in another set of spreadsheets or collected elsewhere, but you would be adding this information into your table. So in this case, it's the name of the database, and it's been repeated multiple times. And what's different is the fiscal year for each line. And then you would have your renewal month, your cost that you have for that resource, percent change, in this case, not yet a percentage looking, but it will be, the usage that has been collected and the cost per use again from the division of cost and total usage. So this is our data that we're going to be working with to build the tables and the pivot tables and charts for the dashboard. Okay, so I'm going to turn this into a formatted table, and what that'll take is grabbing their data, so you can just kind of drag over your columns and pick all your rows, and in your case you might have lots of rows, so this might take a moment. You can do Control plus Shift to the right hand side, and then Control Shift down, and that should get your data as well. You'll click Format as Table, and then you'll select table to format as. I always pick this blue one. I just have an affinity for it, so I'm just going to click OK. And then this pop-up window will come up. So where is this data on your table? And then you want to make sure that this My Table has headers is checked off, so you click OK. So now you have a formatted table for your data that you have for your master table. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next section. This section will focus on creating 4 different pivot tables on their own tabs. So clicking somewhere here in our formatted master table, I'm going to click on Table Design, just make sure that's selected if it isn't, and then click on Summarize with Pivot Table. And then this window comes up, and you want to make sure that it says, or this stays on New Worksheet, and then you'll click OK. And then a new tab, Sheet tab will be created. So this first table will focus on the cost from year to year. So from the pivot table fields on this right-hand side, a box opens up, and you'll check off or select resource name, fiscal year, and cost from these checkboxes. So it'll pull up automatically into this table. And then what we'll also need to do is drag up from the rows quadrant up to the filters quadrant the resource name. And then you want to click over back to your table, and I'm just going to select the cells under sum of cost here. And I'm going to go to the Home tab and click the accounting number style, just so that I have dollar amount or dollar signs for these lines. And I'm also going to rename this tab Pivot Cost. And naming the tabs is really important. This will come into play later on. Okay, so you have your first pivot table done. You're going to go back to your master table, and then actually it's going to be the same steps. So this next one is going to be for usage. So we're going to go to Table Design, Summarize with Pivot Table, click OK because you're opening a new worksheet. You're going to select resource name, fiscal year, and total usage. And you're going to drag from the rows quadrant up to filters the resource name, and then now we have our the usage table, but we want to add in commas just to make this view a little easier for down the road. So going home and then selecting the comma style from the number. And then it'll add these decimal points, and we don't need to see those, they're not necessary. So we'll decrease the decimal by 2 points so that we don't have those making things confusing. All right, and then you're going to name this table pivot usage. So that one is done. All right, same steps, going back to the master table, making sure you click somewhere in the table, table design, click on Summarize the Pivot. New worksheet should be selected, click OK. This next pivot table we're going to do is on cost per use. So we'll click resource name, fiscal year, and the cost per use box. And as well, we're going to move up the resource name to the filters quadrant. And then in this case, we also want $signs. So we're going to go back and style those to be that. So going to select those cells, go to home, and then select the accounting style. And then name this pivot cost use. Okay. And then for their last table, we'll create in the master table. And then table design, summarize with pivot, click OK. We'll do the percent change. So selecting resource name, fiscal year, and percent change from the prior year. And then move up resource name up to filters. And then we'll select these to style, go back to home, and then select the percent style. And in this case, we do want to add a couple of decimal points just to see a little bit more granularity. So I'm going to add 2 points using the button on the side here. Okay, so that kind of goes pretty quickly. Again, it's all based on having the data readily available in that master table to draw upon. But these are the 4 bits of our dashboard that are going to be used for this event. So we're going to be building charts with this next. Oh, I just realized I didn't change the name of my tab here. So this is actually going to be pivot percent change. All right, so all set there. So I'm going to create another tab, and I'm just going to move this tab up to the front. And this is actually going to be called charts. And this will essentially serve as the dashboard itself. But I need a home to where to put these charts into. So this will be empty just for a little bit. So these visual charts are representing the 4 pivot tables that we've created that will be added to this tab and to serve as this one-stop dashboard. So starting with the pivot cost tab, just want to make sure that you're selected somewhere into the table, and then going over to the pivot table analyze, you'll click on pivot chart, and it comes up with this suggestion on clustered column. I've just stayed with it, so I'm just going to click OK. And then I have a chart. This is not where I want it to be though, because I want it to be on a singular dashboard. So I'm going to right click it. It's selected. I'm going to right click it and then click move chart. And the second line object in, I want to change the chart or the tab to charts. So that's why naming these tabs makes it really easy to know where you're going to move this to. So I'm going to click OK, and then it automatically brings you into that charts tab. So I'm just going to move this up a bit out of the way, and I'm going to build it from here. So sorry, just let me make sure I've captured everything. Oh, one of the things I want to do here is I'm going to change this header from total. I want to change it to year cost, just so I know what this table is referencing more easily. And then on the upper right side, I'm going to click back into the whole chart as it is rather than just the header. I'm going to click this plus sign chart elements button. And then I want to make sure that the only ones that are selected are chart title. So I'll uncheck axis chart title. I want data labels, data table, and I want to keep the grid lines, but I'm going to take off the legend just to make that a little bit easier to read. And this is customizable. If you want some of those other things, that's okay. This is again just how I had set it up initially. Okay, so that's this first chart done. So cost is done. I'll move on to the pivot usage. Okay. So same deal. You're going to be in the pivot table. Click pivot table analyze. Click on the pivot chart button. Stay with clustered column, click OK, right click onto the chart, move the chart to the charts. Click OK, and then I move this down here. It's really up to your preference where you want to place this. So in this case, I'm going to rename this to total usage searches plus promo, just so I have that little bit of extra context. Some folks may not have a full awareness of what usage means, so this helps a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same kind of chart element selection. So deselect axis, select data labels, data table, and deselect legend. So I have these remaining. And then that one is done. So next is pivot cost per use. Sorry, my Zoom thing button is in the way. Okay, maybe done. Okay, pivot table analyze, then pivot chart. Cluster column is okay, and then right click, with chart. Change this to object and charts. Click OK. Move this up here, and you can make it as pretty as you want or adjust sizes, all of that stuff. I'm just trying to do this kind of as fast as I can. So I'm going to change this title to we'll have our last one for the percent change. And the click into the table, pivot table analyze, pivot chart. Click OK, that's move. So I mean, honestly, there are like repetitive steps for this, especially if you're building one that has like the same kind of a setup, but just based on different tables. So this makes it a bit easier to set it up too. So, and then this will be named percent change. Cost. Change these elements. Okay. All right, so we've have a formatted table in our master table. We've created pivot tables for each of the 4 elements, and now we have charts for each of those as well. So the last step is to create a slicer that unifies these 4 so that you can filter by a resource name. And creating a slicer is it's just super simple. So you'll select a table, click insert slicer, and then we want to pick the resource name as the slicer option that we're going to be focusing on. And then I'll click OK. And then I'm going to move this slicer actually over to the side just to, again, you can put this wherever you would like to, but I'm just putting it over here. And then the best way to move this box around is kind of just to use resource name as your anchor point, so you can move it around. But right now, this slicer is only connected to this, this first chart, so it's not connected to the other ones. So in order to do that, you'll go over here to report connections. And then this box will show the other tables that you can associate. So I'm going to click all of them. And that's now all of them linked together. So if I click on a resource name, I'll just click this one called dataset A. Now all of the charts for this resource are linked together. So you're just seeing the data for this one resource name. So that's why it's really important to have your resource name be normalized so that you don't have an EBSCO, I don't know, I'm just gonna use that example, but like art source and an art and architecture source as 2 for everything, unless you want to view it that way. I mean, that's obviously possible too, but that resource name being kind of normalizes where your anchor is for these filters. And then to remove the filter, you would just clear the filter on upper right side. So I don't know if you want to see everything together, but that also could, you know, if you have all of your databases, for one, that shows like your overall years, that might be a way you want to see it. So there's some potential for that too. I do highly recommend changing the background to the worksheet itself, just to make looking at the charts a little bit easier on the eyes. So I'm going to highlight just using this kind of button on the top left and then select a background color. And I'll do something like this gray. And it helps, again, just the charts pop a bit better. And that's the basics of the dashboard done. From here, the dashboard can be modified for aesthetics, color preferences, design, etc. So I'm going to go back to the slides and then can pick up from there. I'll share just for a moment. Okay, so I apologize if I'm gonna have to go through these, and I have all of these in Excel in the presentation itself, just in case going through the live version, you just need some visual aspect to it as well down the road. So, all right, that's good. So this is my beautified version. So, I mean, not anything completely over the top creative or anything, but it was just adding different colors and you know, trying to make it a little bit more presentation worthy. Okay, and then I do want to just mention about ongoing maintenance and refreshing your data. So as you add in data into the master table for, you know, your usage, cost per use, just make sure that like when you're adding to your data table, you go into one of the pivot tables and click refresh, or you can click that little drop down button and it'll say refresh all, and then that'll get all of your tables. And if there's a desire to see less fiscal years on your charts, then you would need to go into each of the pivot tables field list, and then on the fiscal year line, just check there's a drop down box where you can select which fiscal years you want to be visible. Okay, so I think now I'm going to be passing it on over to Tracy to talk about use cases.
I'm not sure how I'm going to advance the slides, so you may have to do that for me.
Okay.
But so why and how we use this visualization. As Amy mentioned earlier, we have this data on several different spreadsheets, but we needed a better, more visual way to share the information with everyone who needed it. And so Amy did a great job in creating this, and we've really embraced it. We continue to use it even today. The people that we share our information with, we'll call them our stakeholders here. Faculty members, when they ask about adding additional resources, we can pull them up and show them what they have now currently and provide them what they cost and their usage, because we want to find the best resource for their class and research. And the database gives us a great starting point to ask questions about, okay, what you have, what you need. It really does start the conversation well. So I'm going to show some more, talk a little bit more about these other stakeholders, but let's go to the next slide. So this is an example of how we've used this with faculty members or department heads. We send them an email and say, the cost per use of your journals went up again, but the usage is low. It's up to $33 per use. Do we need to keep it? And of course, we try to share it with them, particularly if it's anything over, you know, we have a threshold, anything over $9 or anything over $15, depending on the budget that year. But oftentimes they do tell us that, yes, even though it's $33, we do have to keep it for accreditation. But it also, we can show them here that, okay, your usage is going down, and maybe they'll start using this in class assignments and whatever. And so that's the next slide I want to show you, is how we can take the years. I expanded this out and did 5 years. This is an example of, we looked at this data and knew that this class was only being used every other year because of how the usage was. So this faculty members didn't even realize that, oh yeah, we're not using it in this course, but only in this one. So he did go and try to add it more to his second year course to continue their usage of this resource. One more. And then here's a great example of, we had been talking with trying to get a usage up for many, many years. As Amy mentioned, I expanded this out and added several more years to just look at this one table. And we showed them our cost per use was going down, usage was bad. And so they took it upon themselves to really assign their students to use this resource. And our cost per usage went from like $9 down to $3.78. So a really good way that we were able to visualize our usage to our faculty and get them to use the resource. Our next slide. And then this is kind of exactly what Amy showed you, our dashboard, but this is an example exactly what we send to our provost. They get a static copy every year once the usage has been gathered so that they can look at it. We use the dashboard to show the provost our great usage of what resources we do have, and it helps show our value to the university. It makes, the library is adding a lot to the university because we do provide all these resources. It also helps when we are asking money to try to keep this resource when the usage is high, but the annual cost keeps going up 3-4% every year, but we can provide this and they'll say, yeah, we need to keep it. We do a review of our library resources for every new program or degree that's added, and they can look at these and see what resources we have to see which ones are used or not used, and just gives them another reference point whenever they're looking to increase funding for resources. And then our last slide I'm going to show you this is the slide that we send when we are actually sending a renewal to our purchasing department. We add additional information at the top. Does it have a VPAT? Does it conform to have a license agreement? Is it under a consortia deal, or any other notes that we need them to consider, like it's under a 3-year contract and expires in 2026. So it's very good information for them have. It has the title, the years of the subscription, and then the cost, and then the usage and everything there. We have to send this information along with our Dean of Libraries, a formal approval to renew any items. So this is a really valuable tool. We use it lots and lots of ways, and I'm glad that we're still using it even today. So that's all I had.
Thank you, Phoebe. Okay, so as a parting gift, we are sharing the sample data, which is anonymized. It's not Tarleton's actual usage and cost data. As well, we are sharing also a step-by-step document with the instructions shared in this presentation. And then additionally, we have a kind of completed dashboard template that you can customize. All of these are saved in a Google Drive folder and should allow for viewing and downloading. It doesn't have editing access on the Google Sheet, but you should be able to pull it into your own Excel and play around with it as well. So that's it for us for this basic presentation, and thank you for your time.